Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel Learn with Virali. I'm Virali, your guide on this PMP adventure. If you are new to my channel, I'm Virali, a certified PMP professional helping people to pass their PMP exams on the very first try. So if you're not subscribed to my channel yet, please make sure to subscribe as it helps me to create more such kind of videos and offer help to the community. In today's video, where we are talking about 100-day series of our PMP PMBOK 8th edition, in day 2 of this video, I'm going to talk about the structured changes that I talked about in day 1. I'll be linking that video for day 1 right on the top and side corner for us to discuss about what are the 5 focus areas that were developed or that were added newly, replacing the old process groups. So let's discuss them in detail to see what are the changes that are there in PMBOK 8 edition and what we need to understand from the examination point of view. So let's get started. So in day 1, I told you that one of the 5 key changes in PMBOK 8 was the structure is back. So specifically, PMI replaced the old process groups with something called as 5 focus areas. So now, most of the question that I have got so far is, okay, what are these 5 focus areas? Can you explain it in a little bit more detail? And how are they different from the old process groups that we had? And how is it going to be impacting or changing it from the exam perspective? So this is the video that we are going to be addressing all these questions just to understand these 5 focus areas in a little bit more detail. And this is day 2 of our 100-day to PMP certification. I'll link the video for day 1 on the top right hand side corner, so do check it out if you haven't checked it already. So let us see what are we covering in this video. So 4 things that we are going to be covering in this video. First, what was replaced by PMI in these process groups, given understand the real question like what was broken in the first place that we got this change. Second, all 5 focus areas explained one by one or step by step, as I'm going to give you some tricks and tips to remember this in a very easy format. Third thing that I wanted to discuss is where these 40 processes now live under these 5 buckets. And the fourth one is the most important question, like what all this means for you in case if you are taking or planning to take the exam during July 2026 specifically. Let's start with our first question, why? In a way that what was broken in the first place. So to understand the focus areas, you need to understand the journey. Let's say PMBOK 6 was released in 2017, which had 49 process groups, 10 knowledge areas, and 5 process groups, like initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and then finally closing the project, which was definitely very structured, very prescriptive. Practitioners did love this approach, but then came the next version, which was PMBOK 7, definitely arrived in 2021 and completely removed all of these processes that were in place. So there is no process list, no knowledge areas, just 12 principles and 8 performance domains. That's all we had in PMBOK 7. Now, the global PM community did share this feedback in terms of being lost or feeling it being too abstract. So that's where PMI listened and a new PMBOK 8th edition was released in 2026. Pretty much it came out in 2025, but it's going to be effective since 2026. So what is the change that is being put into place in PMBOK 8? So it's having the structure back, but instead of calling them process groups, they are now called as focus areas. So same lifecycle concept, initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and then closing the project, but redesigned to work across predictive, agile, and hybrid environments. So inside those 5 areas, all those 40 non-prescriptive processes resides. So you can choose which one to apply to your project and when. That's the answer to what changed, and now let's understand each of these areas in a little bit more detail. So here are 5 focus areas at a glance. I'm going to give you a single tip to remember what gets done in each of these areas so that you can link those 40 processes together to remember it perfectly from the exam standpoint. Now, we have 5 processes linked over here, or 5 areas that we wanted to discuss about: initiating, planning, executing, monitor and control, and then closing. So first, if you want to remember it properly, initiating is something that you need to discuss and finalize, like what is this project and is it even worth doing it? So that's where you kind of define the value, get authorization, and also identify the stakeholders. Second step, or the second focus area here, is planning, wherein you decide how are we going to deliver this particular project. So that's where the entire planning happens, wherein you bifurcate this into small chunks, like defining scope, schedule, budget, have some risks and the assessments done to make sure that we address those things prior to starting the project. So everything is planned and ready to start executing. Next step, as we just mentioned, comes executing, and that's where the actual work gets done. So that's where you deliver the work, you manage the team, and then you engage the stakeholders just to understand their feedback. Or if we are having any problems during the execution, then we engage with those stakeholders. The next step comes as to monitor and control. That's where we still question, are we delivering the value and what exactly needs to change in order to reach towards the final finish line? That's where you track the value, you measure performance, and you control the changes. And now, the last and the final step is to close the project. That's where we see or discuss again, did we deliver the value that we promised? So that's where we just go ahead and jot down the lessons learned. Formal completion happens as a part of the process, and that's how we close the project. Now let's deep dive into each one of them one by one. So the first focus area that we are discussing is initiating. So remember, what is the project and is it even worth doing is the main question that we are addressing in this focus area. So 3 things happen here. Number 1, the value gets defined, as in before you even write a single line of code or a single line of requirement, you assign a single task to yourself to understand a big question like why this project even exists, what is the outcome that it does produce, and then how it connects towards the organization's value and proposition. So that is the first step, wherein we define the value of the project, understanding why. Second is to get authorization. So this is where the project charter lives. In PMBOK 8, the charter is your formal permission to begin spending the resources. So that means if you do not have a charter to your project, you cannot begin the project. So no charter, no project. And the third thing that initiating focus area cares about is to identify the stakeholders. So this means who is affected by this project, who is going to be influenced by this project. You build your initial stakeholder list during this very first step of building or conducting or starting your project, which is the register that would shape every decision that follows for this particular project. So the second focus area is planning. Remember the one-liner sentence that we discussed to relate this and remember it properly from the exam standpoint as how are we going to deliver this particular project. So this is where the entire planning comes into picture. This is where you define the scope, this is where you define or plan the schedule, you have risk assessment, and then basically all the entire planning in terms of the budget is also done in this particular focus area. Now please remember, from PMBOK's 8 perspective, planning is adaptive. That means it may look different for different types of environments like hybrid, agile, or waterfall model. So what this means is whether you are running a predictive waterfall or an agile project, it really gives you a flexibility there which was not definitely available in PMBOK 6 or PMBOK 7. So now you have a framework that helps you tailor the context in PMBOK 8 planning focus area. Now, what gets planned in this area? We can see different boxes as far as you can see it on the screen. So everything you would expect, like scope, this is where the actual WBS lives in, understanding what's in, what's out. Next is schedule, that means how long using whatever resources, that is the approach that we'll be taking to reach towards the finish line. Next thing that you would plan is the budget. So that's where the finance performance domain covers cost planning in detail. Next would come in is the risk. So you would basically identify the threats and opportunities before execution and not during executing the project. Please remember. Now, stakeholders would be the next part. That's where not just identified here, but they are in full engagement, basically understanding how the strategy is planned and how is it going to be put into place. And last one is the resources team, which is where the team lives, where internal tools are structured, and what materials will be used during this particular project. So planning is where the projects are either set up, succeed, or fail, but here you would have a particular framework to kind of address to the context of the environment that you are kind of operating for that particular project. So the third focus area is executing. Remember, this is where the actual work gets done. So here we do 4 different things, like deliver the work, that is where the actual deliverables are produced, and then you go manage the team, so that is where you resolve the conflicts, you coach your team members, and you lead the team. The people domain is most active during this particular focus area. The next we have is to engage the stakeholders, so that is where communication happens a lot, reporting do go back and forth, expectation management, and then ongoing back and forth feedbacks. That is all what happens during this executing phase to make sure that the expectations are aligned and we are in the right direction for leading this particular project. Next we have is to manage quality and procurement. Execute QA processes is a part of this particular step. Manage vendor relationships and handle contracts is all what is included in this particular part of executing. Also remember that 60% of 40 processes live in executing focus area from PMBOK 8th perspective. So focus area 4 is monitoring and controlling. The one-liner sentence that you can remember here just to relate everything is, are we still delivering the value and what needs to change? Now, in PMBOK 7, the monitor and control process was handled in a different way entirely, wherein we had a measurement performance domain. So all the outcomes and the performance indicators were in place to measure the project performance, but there was a very little information that was given in terms of how to handle deviations in case if they happened during the project, which left many project managers guessing onto situations on how to proceed next. So that's where PMI listened and PMBOK 8 has some updated changes. And that's where when we say the structure is back, we have monitor and control processes are back. Integrated change control is here. So that's where there is a formal process for evaluating and approving the changes. Now, performance reporting process tells you how to communicate the project status, and then the clear scope, schedule, and cost control processes gives you the structure to actually manage the deviations that were pretty much asked from PMBOK 7's perspective by the project managers. The key shift in PMBOK 8 is in framing. Like, it's not just are we on time or are we on budget, but it pretty much answers in a more strategic way here, that is it still what we are planned or what we have promised to deliver or not. So this is what your July 2026 exam is going to be testing with different case scenarios given to the questions for you to answer. So the 5th focus area is closing, and the one-liner sentence that we can remember for closing is, Did we finish the project is not something that we bring in from PMBOK 7, but here we are discussing about did we deliver the value that was promised to the stakeholder. That is what is being addressed in this particular focus area. So in PMBOK 7, we had a different language in terms of if we were if we completed the project on time, on budget, we shipped it, okay, that's it. Closing the project now makes more sense. But in PMBOK 8, closing comes with a little bit of benefit realization, which is now more of an explicit focus. So it's not enough to just deliver the output, making sure that the scope is completed or the deliverables are handed over. But PMBOK 8 do ask that did the stakeholders actually get the outcome of the project as it was promised before, considering that as a business value. So alongside the formal acceptance, it does get documented sign off from your sponsor or from your customer. You do have lessons learned. PMBOK 8 puts significant more emphasis on what were the benefits that were achieved from this particular project, giving a good go, understanding that closing your project doesn't really mean that did we ship? Okay, all right, that's all, we are done. So in terms of formally closing the project, there are a couple things that are now being considered as far as closing is concerned. We do have formal acceptance, we do have lessons learned, we do have organizational learning that happens for the next project to follow, and then definitely releasing the resources that were associated with this project, making it a formal close to the project. So now, what does all of this mean for your July 2026 PMP exam? We need to consider these 5 different changes. Number 1 is definitely no memorization. The exam is not going to ask you questions like which process number belongs to which focus area. It is instead going to test how would you think across these focus area and which is going to be the most applicable process for this particular scenario. So basically understanding the context and judging and then making a call to action rather than just listing down or memorizing the process and the focus area. Second is scenario-based questions. So you will get a project situation and be asked to identify the right focus area that is supposed to be in action. Understanding the guiding question here for each focus area is going to be more useful than memorizing the process names. The third one is predictive and agile both count. So all 5 focus areas apply to both delivery approaches, considering it either of the environments like predictive or agile or even hybrid. So now executing it in a waterfall project, it is definitely going to look different. So executing in a Scrum project is going to be different. So the exam is going to be testing you on both the scenarios. So understand the project scenario properly. The fourth one is business environment jumped from 8% to 26% of the exam content or the exam number of questions. And then monitoring and controlling are now testing the strategic thinking and value delivery. So it's not just the project compliance. This is going to be a massive shift. Fifth one is the value delivery is the lens for each of the focus area. So every question on the new exam is going to kind of test that lens, like how does this serve the project's value outcomes? Keep that in mind as you study and practice accordingly. If this helped, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share it with more people preparing for the upcoming PMP exam with a changed format with PMBOK's 8th edition. Over the next 100 days, I will be covering a full PMBOK's 8th framework, the 2026 July examination changes and the format, AI tools that is being used by the project managers, and a lot more. Before you go, I would like to ask one question to understand your perspective. Please drop your answers in the comments below. What would you think is the most underrated area from the PM's standpoint? Like they don't take seriously enough and it is going to affect them with this new PMBOK's 8th edition. Do let me know in the comment section and I'll see you in day 3.